bring to the board's attention. So and it has to do with the elementary schools. As you know, the school's in session, everything went well. The building committee is winding down and just, going over, getting a status on where everything is. As I understand it, there were some punch items that, need to be done at each of the schools. But then also going through the project, there were some items that they were not able to do. And so one of the areas that we have was we had budgeted, I believe, like $1.674,000 as part of the bonding package for financing costs. So I've done an analysis of the financings that we've done today, and then we still have more financings to do on the project because we haven't we do temporary notes and then we permanently bond. So we still have $20 million more that we're going to need to permanently bond. So at this point in time, we have notes outstanding, $18 million. So looking at the number of note sales and bond sales that we're going to have, and the premium dollars that we've received on the sales that we've done to date, I've done this analysis. I've reviewed it with the financial advisor that we use when we do the bond and note sales, and I would feel a level of comfort to release about $500,000 of that pool of funds for the building committee to be able to finish some of the items that they couldn't do because of the way the things that they had to deal with during the project and just weren't able to do with the funds that they had.
So you're talking about over budget items?
I'm not necessarily that they're over budget, as I understand it, because, like, for example, in some, I believe it was at Lily B, they had a lot of more asbestos remediation that they had to do.
Expanded scope.
Expanded scope. Thank you. So this is the kind of thing that is keeping from doing some things that they really feel are important to make the projects more perfect, if you will. So while no action is necessary on the part of the boards, we felt it important to just bring this to this board's attention, because when we were going through the bonding process, we had lengthy discussions about the fund, what we were appropriating, and then having that extra money set aside for financing costs. So I just wanted to kind of put it out there for you.
So if there wasn't the expanded scope and there was underspending on the financing, where would that underspending from the financing go?
So at the end of the day, it would be less money that we would bond, because, as I've said, we have notes outstanding, and so we would eventually, we're going to have 2 more bond sales over the next couple of years. So we would bond less. So in other words, if we put the $500,000 into the project, then that's going to mean we'll bond that $500,000, which we otherwise wouldn't have.
Okay.
So did we come in on budget for all 3 schools?
If I may?
You may.
Yeah.
We came in on budget, but we blew our furniture budget of $576,000 roughly, because we used that to help offset exactly what Anna said, asbestos, a lot of unexpected costs that were found.
So what happened to the contingency fund we had?
Used as well.
So we used the contingency, and we used the funding that we had set aside for furniture.
Yes, and I don't have final numbers yet. The board of the town building committee meets on the 19th, but they're working. O&G is working with both Mariana and Anna on final.
So what did we use the contingency on?
Exactly what I just said. Over
But I mean,
costs.
do we have a
list? Yeah, there's a list of items that the contingency was done. There was talk about replacing all the windows, for example, across all the buildings. That was not in the scope of the plan at Flanders School. So there's a classic case of contingency money that needed to be used to finish all the windows, so we weren't coming back to you for additional CIP money.
So the way I asked the question initially when this whole project was kicked off was that the budget is firm, the dollars for the budget stays the same, and the scope flexes to meet the budget. So as you had overage in asbestos removal, you decrease the money you spent for furniture or windows or something else, and you manage the scope to stay within the budget. So now you've got some extra money here because financing is a little bit low. So you're doing the same thing. You're de-scoping the amount needed for financing and trying to turn that scope into fixing asbestos or replacing some of those chairs that you couldn't or something else.
Exactly.
How much was in the contingency fund?
Between O&G's contingency and our contingency, I don't have the number off the top of my head.
Isn't it a
It's
percentage
aside.
generally of the project? I mean, is it like $1 million? Because this was like a 30-some million dollar project.
Was it-
38, roughly 37.5 million.
So it's got to be at least $1 million or $2 million. I mean, because you got to have something set
I
aside.
forget what the percentage was. They had a percentage, we had a percentage.
So
I don't
how
remember what the
about
number was.
next month we get a list, an idea, a number for what the contingency was and what it was spent on? Because I'm thinking that's a couple $1 million probably. And it'd be something we'd be interested in seeing what we spent it on.
Yeah,
So what are you doing about the furniture?
well, we have furniture that needs to be replaced. We're not gonna be able to replace some furniture, but there is furniture that needs to be replaced across the schools.
So what, no, I know, but what are you gonna do for funding for that?
$500,000. Some of that.
The
So-
financing.
This is great news,
They're-
yeah.
They're changing, they're just rescoping.
Oh,
The
so you're
financing
taking the-
scope is going into furnishing
We're
scope.
taking the $500,000 that would have gone back to the taxpayers and we're gonna buy furniture with it. Do I understand that right?
More, yes, you could.
And not just furniture, I mean, be clear. I mean, there's pieces of furniture, there's other holdback, there's parking, there's paving on either side of the Libby Haynes that we had planned to try and do, can't do that. This will allow us to now do that. There's other holdback items as well.
But you haven't expanded the scope from the initial project. You're just trying to manage the scope to the level that the budget's available.
Exactly, exactly,
And as different things cost more than expected, you're de-scoping other areas, and
yes. Staying within the $37.5 million.
seems consistent with the way that it was presented initially.
I'll be interested to see the allocation of contingency funding next month.
And then I just wanted to talk about, so our auditors have been in, they've come in a week in August and a week this month, they were in last week, to do preliminary scope work for the audit. And then we had, Mariana and I had a meeting with them at the end of last week to review what the schedule is for the actual field work. And they're scheduled to come in the first 3 weeks of November. And we have Mr. Bassett scheduled to come to your meeting in November. So they'll have been, started, so then that will be a good point for him to give the board an update.
Okay.
Bill, if I could I just go back to one item for Kevin? I just forgot to ask it. So, all the police cars that are doing traffic detail for these projects, is that all how's that being paid for?
As we adopted a couple of years ago, the entire cost of everything is picked up by the contractor. They pay, I believe it's a little over $25 an hour for the use of the car, because that goes into a fund now to purchase police cars. But there's no money being expended by the town to cover the overtime or the use of the cars.
So that must go to the overtime fund, right? Because then I'm just saying.
No, it doesn't come out of the policeman's overtime fund at all, because
Oh, but it-
well, and it'd be the best, but I believe what happened is you bill the contractor for the amount of the services. They'll get paid, of course, but then the money comes back to the town for the amount of time they worked, because there's a different rate for a highway job
Let me
for overtime.
rephrase the question. I'm not asking the question properly. Is the funding that we get, or is the revenue that we get from the contractor, does that cover the cost of overtime and the police vehicle use? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yes, it does.
It's a wash. There's no taxpayer burden
No.
with the police cars, right? With the traffic detail, is that?
So how it works is, in terms of vehicle-specific, there's a $25 per hour fee that gets charged to the contractor for the vehicle. That $25 goes into CNRE, and that's for future purchase of police vehicles. Then there's also a portion that we bill for the wages and all the payroll taxes that are relative to the time that they work.
Right. So are the scales even? I don't feel like
Yes,
I'm
there's,
hearing the answer.
no, yeah, exactly, yes. The town is not paying
There's
any
no-
part of the overtime.
There's no over expense
No.
than the revenue we're bringing in, right? Please.
So the only issue
Oh, the
that
chief's
we-
right here. Why not let the chief?
Hi, Mike.
Just really quickly, because you actually gain money because there's an administrative fee that's charged for each hour worked. So the vehicle is $25 an hour. That goes into that revenue to purchase vehicles, which we've defrayed from the taxpayers. But there's also with each hour worked an administrative fee, which we bear the sole burden of administration of that. So that actually goes into the revenue that comes into the town. So you're actually making money at the end of the day because you are charging exactly what the officer's being paid per hour, including fringe benefits.
So the general fund has got a line item for construction.
So what happens is, I created a special account for when we pay payroll. So then when we get the payment from the vendors, it's broken down according to where it gets allocated. Like the wage portion goes into the wage account, the $25 goes to CNRE, and then we have a miscellaneous revenue account that's in the budget that the remaining portion goes to.
Here's why I'm asking. It just seems to me that an overtime rate for a policeman is more than $25 an hour.
Oh, it is. We bill over
We are charging
$100.
excess of $100 an hour. It's $25 just for the vehicle.
Okay, so who's paying for the wages for the?
They are, the
They are.
So
construction
they're
company.
paying for the car
Yes.
and the wages?
Oh,
It
yes.
is, and again, I can't give you the
Yeah.
exact because it depends on which officer.
All right,
or-
because I wasn't clear.
It's
Maybe
well
I
over
didn't fully
$100 an
understand
hour
you.
that you're charging
They-
whatever vendor it
They
is.
pay
Okay.
3 different line items. They pay for the car, they pay for the officer, and they pay for the admin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we done with the first selectman going back to the board of director? I mean, board of director. Madam Board of Directors.
So I had gone over the items that I wanted to review with you. Not if anyone has any questions.
And we'll hit CNRE a little bit later down the agenda. So we
Yes, that
can,
was the paperwork that was
Yep.
in your green folder.
Any other questions? Heard none, thank you. Moving on to new business. Board of Finance bylaw discussion amendment vote. So an email went out this week to talk about the fact that we couldn't vote on the amendment to the bylaws because there was no motion made. So because reviewing the minutes from last month, there was no motion made, there was no second, we can't vote on a motion that wasn't made.
Is there a tenant in here that requires the full board attendance?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we can't do it tonight then either?
Correct.
Unless we were to suspend the bylaws and then vote and then put the bylaws back into effect, which means we don't
No.
have a lot of respect for the
No.
bylaws, so we don't want to do
I
that.
don't want to do that.
So, along that vein, we do have a motion before us tonight that will allow us to make this change next month instead of this month. So, if you'd like to pass these out,
Is this different than what we have?
it's what we have, it's just got
No, I
as
mean-
legalese wrapped around it.
So it's different than this?
So, no, the amendment is the same,
Oh,
but
Okay.
she's wrapped some legalese around the front of it just to make it legal. Because
Okay.
that's how Ann works. She is much more thorough in her language than I am.
all right, so our goal tonight is just to discuss it, see if we have no issues, and we'll vote on it next month. Is that correct?
If there's any formal continuation of the discussion, yes, and then we'll have a formal motion and a formal second, and then we'll go back into the same motion of all board members can electronically vote on the motion, and then next meeting, we can read those votes into the record and pass or deny the motion as position, or as motioned.
So I just want to acknowledge, Ann, you are doing this. It's a
Yes.
great idea,
Thank you.
and I wish we had done it before.
Yes, I know. Well, I thought we would all, at some point, be all present to vote, but that doesn't seem to be happening. So the next best thing is email, and the bylaws follow Robert's rules, which allow for email if it's specified. So we kind of don't have a choice. So what this motion does, it substantively gets us to approve the amendment, which had no to which there was no objection when we discussed. And then it goes through the procedure, you know, of having discussed it and then, you know, choosing to do it by email because we need to fulfill the requirement that all members vote. And that seems to be the only physical way that it's going to happen.
So is this gonna be sent out electronically soon?
Yes,
Okay,
this actual motion, which we can read this evening, will be sent out,
okay.
and then everyone will vote on it that way. And then the results of that will be read in the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
And then we'll have a follow-on discussion about adding the option of email votes into the bylaws, so next time we don't need this much detail
Right,
for a motion.
At some point, you know.
And then the bylaws won't be quiet on this subject. Any other discussions about the amendment before us that has the board assign mentors for new members?
Bill had one thought to change the October 1, 2019 date to just read before the next regular meeting of the board, rather than have that date in there, so.
Okay,
Yeah, this,
yeah.
it's an arbitrary date, so.
So,
that's fine. By me.
Any other conversation, discussion about the amendment before us? Here and now, do I have a motion?
sure, I'll move to adopt an amendment to the bylaws of the Board of Finance of the Town of East Lyme, Connecticut, entitled, quote, "Draft Amendment to Article 6, Paragraph 2 of the bylaws of the Board of Finance dated June 12, 2019, and attached hereto." The amendment is made pursuant to Article 9 of the bylaws and has been read and discussed at the regular meeting of August 14th, 2019. Further, to meet the requirement of Article 9 that all board members vote on the amendment, the vote shall be conducted by email. The finance director shall provide all board members by email a copy of this motion and attachment, along with a complete copy of the bylaws indicating and underlining the amendment. Board members shall cast their votes prior to the next regular meeting of the board, replying affirmatively or negatively to the email received. The voting results shall be announced and read into the record at the next regular meeting of the board.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, no further discussion. We will suspend this until next meeting. Okay, moving on to item B, special appropriation, public works equipment. $15,000 from CNRE.
So Mr. McGraw is here to begin the discussion on this item.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, how are you?
I-
So I believe you have a memo in front of you that's already been in front of the Board of Selectmen, kind of going. So what I want to do is I want to kind of walk through this memo of what we're looking for, why we're looking for it. This is a kind of important, I mean, we think these are safety and efficiency things. I do have my general foreman and my my fleet manager here as well, just to ask any questions, just to make sure that everything is. So over the years, when we sell off equipment, I just want to kind of go over it. It goes into a capital non-recurring account for sale of proceeds. And this isn't. This is not only equipment, the new equipment if you sold off older stuff, but there are things that have been sitting around our yard for 25 years or something like that we've been putting them on public surplus and trying to, get some money back to town into account for when opportunities arise where equipment is needed. So that's the fund that we're talking about, the funding source. So the, three things have come up that we'd like to present in front of you that have already been in front of the Board of Selectmen. The first is replacement of lift system for vehicle maintenance. So just so we're clear, that's the actual, in the auto shop, it lifts up the vehicles. So it's not something that you pump up, it lifts up. This is talking large equipment. The piece of equipment we have now, we have two different operations. We have the large dump trucks, and then the smaller fleet. The smaller fleet, all the pickups, the mason dumps, all this, that makes sense. That piece of equipment that services the small trucks and stuff is very old. It's inspected every year. So, so the question is, why are you asking now? So it passed the inspection last year, last fall. This spring, it had an issue, so when we came out to have it repaired, there was a lot more issues with it. So this is kind of our lifeblood of maintaining this equipment. And I was notified late in the spring, way after the budget cycle, and at the end of last fiscal year, I had no money to do this. Well, we're getting to the point where this lift might not be operational much longer unless we do something soon. So we got pricing, and I'm kind of going down each one first, just so I can kind of cover it. The pricing we have for this lift system is off of the state bid. So from a procurement standpoint, that's how we're dealing with the procurement standpoint. The one that's existing there now could possibly be repaired at like half the cost of a new one, but it's undersized as is. It doesn't even pick up the equipment that we need. So the lift we have now is a 10,000 pound capacity. This one we're proposing 12. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that extra 2,000 is all the difference in picking up everything as opposed to picking up 80% of our small fleet. So we think this is a really smart move. And we do service all, Board of Ed, police, everyone. We were actually even servicing fire department apparatus, which we didn't do in the past. So that's the first item. The second item is the snow push box. So what that is, that's the thing that, you go to Crystal Mall and you see all those humongous pieces of steel. The town has one right now. The highway department has one. It's a 14-footer. We keep it over at the community center. It has a use, 14 feet, but it's way too big for over there. And what we're looking for is to have, so if you're aware, Board of Ed cut the funding for outside plowing. Now, that was 2 years ago. So last winter was the first year, and that was a great year. We didn't have much snow last year. So we're anticipating that not every year we're going to have like 10 inches of snow the whole winter. So this 10-foot snow box we'd like to get for that whole area, the community center, Lily B. Haynes, and if we brought the 14-foot snow box into that area with all those new parking lots at Lily B, we would be spending a lot more than $2,300 in repair. It can't go over the road, it's too big. So the 10-foot is a much better piece of equipment. So this is like a thinking ahead. We did have an older snow blower that we sold off, and that was the reason we sold it off is because you had to operate it driving backwards. So it really wasn't a functional unit for us. We sold it off for $2,300, same amount that we want to get the snow box. So we got a piece of equipment that we weren't using that wasn't really safe for our guys to use to propose the $2,300. We had 3 prices on the snow box from the procurement process, even though it's under $2,500. Shop press, the last one. I got word through the Public Works listserv that OSHA's going around towns, and they're, hi, I'm OSHA, we're here to inspect, so I kind of put a mandate on all our water, sewer, highway, everyone else, clean up your shops, make sure everything is OSHA compliant.
But you're always like that, right, Joe?
Well,
You're always OSHA compliant.
Any town would say, you still got to walk through and make sure everything is good. Everyone's trying to get by with that piece of old equipment. Well, one of the pieces of equipment in the highway shop was a hydraulic press. Now, Kevin's here if you have any specific questions, but basically what it does is allows them to make custom parts for all these rolling stock that we have, which saves a lot of money. That piece of equipment doesn't have guards, so if OSHA came in, they'd say, shut it down, you're getting fined for that, so we shut it down immediately. So for $4,500, this is a good savings. So all 3 items, $15,000. It's all in the sale of proceeds. We've sold off $46,000 worth of equipment in the last year and a half. It's all in that account. That's the story of these. If you have any specific questions, they can answer. But I was hoping to give you an overview of why we're here and why we need to move now and not wait till the budget cycle. These things need to be done now than waiting another 9 months.
I do have a question. The press, you're paying 25% of the cost on shipping. Is there nowhere local?
These are not my bodyguards, they're my staff.
Look like
We're here tonight.
Hi there.
The local options, even in factoring for the shipping, are astronomically more money.
Okay.
This press is probably the lowest end that we can purchase and still have it effectively do the job.
Uh-huh.
So even though the freight is spelled out and seems like a lot of money, if I was to the 3 quotes I got, the next one up was $6,000. So and that did not have the shipping included in it. There aren't many local vendors that carry things like that, so it's kind of an industrial specialty and automotive use, but that's the reason for it.
Where are these guys located? MSC?
MSC has a
International.
distribution center in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. They do have local stores, but a piece of equipment like this, like I said, is kind of specialized, so they don't typically carry it in a store. But we do a lot of business with them, and they give us pretty good pricing. So
I'm in support. I got no issues.
What's the projected life of these?
The one we have now is rated at 50-ton capacity, and that one is very old. The urban legend with it is that it came out of one of the trade schools that quit the program. But again, it's very old. It's unable to be fit with the guards. It's very primitive, but it's always worked for us. And until the OSHA kind of, we started looking at everything, we hadn't considered it as defective as it turns out that it is. But we should be able to get at least 15 years out of it. It's a tool that is not everyday use, but when you need it, there isn't anything else that can do the job. So I would expect at least 15 years out of it, if not longer.
How about the other two items?
The lift itself, the maintenance lift, I haven't had enough experience with them to be able to tell you what's an expected lifespan for it. I would say 10 years. The issue we've run across with this lift is obviously it gets used several times a day. But what we found with this one is that the bearing construction inside the column allowed salt to get in there. It's hidden from view, but somehow salt managed to get in there. And in lieu of the bearing turning the way it was supposed to, the bearing seized and it wore out the trunnion that bearing rides on. So it's pretty significant repairs to actually try to fix this one, and a lot more downtime if we were to keep going. As Joe pointed out, that one is current use is rated at 10,000 pounds. Every model year that goes by, we seem to be increasing the GVWs on these vehicles. So the 12,000 pounds should carry us throughout the life of that. I would estimate 10 years on that, but I'm completely estimating.
Okay,
And
thanks.
the snow box is just like a snow plow, but it's got the sides.
Correct, yeah, and this one is 10 feet wide. It has the ability to attach to multiple pieces of equipment that we currently have in our fleet. So the big benefit to us is we'll be able to transport it over the road on that piece of equipment instead of putting it on a trailer and tying up 3 pieces to get that job done.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Question maybe more for Anna. The total of $15,741 and change coming out of CNRE. What is this? I did not have a total of what our current CNRE status is, so I couldn't make a judgment there.
Isn't that just handed out?
I did, and I actually, the report that you have, it has a balance of $20,544. However, I also need to, if we look at the report, the revenue report, we actually sold $47,950 worth of equipment last fiscal year, so that would get added, so let's say $67,000.
So you're at 67,000,
Right,
considering this
Yeah.
new selling. Okay.
Where is that number? Is it on this sheet here? The balance in CNRE?
Oh, the revenue from the, so if you look, just about,
On here?
it's on that sheet, it's on page 2, I believe. Yeah,
Mhm.
and the balance is $20,544, but that's before we add to it what we took in last fiscal year, which was $47,950, which you can see on the revenue sheet.
Where is she finding that?
Hey.
On your phone.
All right.